In today's episode, we're diving into the life of an inspiring U.S. expat who's been embracing the vibrant culture of Costa Rica for nearly a decade.
We're not just talking about living abroad, we're exploring the heart of it.
Raising a family, adapting to new customs, and thriving in a foreign land.
Stay tuned until the very end as our guest reveals her top 5 essential tips for anyone considering a life-changing move abroad.
It's more than an interview, it's a journey into a life less ordinary.
So Joan, can you share with us what inspired you to move to Costa Rica?
Sure. I actually moved from Texas to Costa Rica about 10 years ago. And at the time, I thought there was not any place better in the world than Austin, Texas. And someone brought to my attention that I could also work and live abroad, possibly the only cooler thing I could imagine than Austin. And I decided to buy a flight, try living in Costa Rica for 3 months, and I loved it.
Did you know someone there already, or?
I did not, but there is a large expat presence in Costa Rica, large enough that it's easy to discover online where to go, where there are the most expats, how to do things, how to live, and seemed like worth doing.
You just did some online research initially, and is that how you decided where you were going to do your first initial 3-month stay?
Absolutely. Yep. And of course, I picked a place that turned out to be not the right fit for me in Costa Rica. But within a month, I had already made friends who recommended an even better fit for me, another town. And I've more or less been in the same town for the last 9 years.
Do you want to go into some of the challenges you faced? Just like you mentioned, there were some not so good areas.
Of course. Yes, actually pretty funny because you don't know until your feet hit the ground, what the place is actually like. And for me, when I moved here, I was 24 and I needed to be around some people my age, some other expats, maybe also working online. And at the time, the place I picked to move was more rural than I was used to, maybe 5,000 people and no Google Maps. There's no street addresses, so it was hard. It wasn't a good fit. And the place was mostly retired, not necessarily just expats, but it was more of a retirement community. So I needed to find a younger town to live in. I would say that's a big challenge. There's a lot of retired expats here.
Mm-hmm. And did you speak Spanish when you first moved? Or?
I thought I spoke Spanish. I spoke good Spanish. I spent all of high school in Spanish classes, and I grew up in Texas, so I was used to speaking some Spanish. But being immersed in a country where they speak Spanish is completely different. You don't realize the words you don't know. Most important is food and directions. But I needed to grow in that area as well. The first hotel I woke up in, I couldn't order breakfast in the morning because they were using different words that I knew. And that was really disappointing. The lady thought I wanted her to clean my room, and I just wanted pastries.
I mean, that kind of forces you to learn faster, right? When you're...
It did. I learned immediately the word for pastry on the spot that moment. I learned how to get around using, like measurements. This is 200 meters from the church rather than, like go left in a quarter mile.
Right. Yeah. Erica, you had a similar experience in Nicaragua, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I lived in Nicaragua for 2 years. And yes, I mean, the Spanish in Nicaragua is very different from the Spanish you learn in the U.S. So it's, I think it's
shocking.
Maybe you'd agree, but that would be one of my big tips for anyone moving to Latin America is find a way to learn some local slang before you go.
Yeah, local words, especially for things like the bathroom or utilities that you might need to use. Things that they use for public services are really important. But also, I don't think I would have learned Spanish and felt confident and comfortable without immersion. So unfortunately, I'd say it's easy to convince yourself that you know Spanish or any language, until you're actually immersed in it. That's the best way for me to learn.
Yeah.
But I did want to, so just to back up to your first couple of days there. So you started, you got a flight, You selected your city. It sounds like you started out at a hotel.
Yeah.
So those first 3 months, were you in a hotel or did you find an apartment?
No, I just wanted to get into a hotel first, just to spend the night, and see if I could look around the town and find some, places available for rent. And a lot of people post even on Craigslist here or, various Facebook groups that are really pretty easy to access. But the first night I picked a little hotel on the beach, not a hostel, just a small hotel. Could wake up with like the sound of the ocean. It was an incredible experience, It was hotter than I expected. But yeah, I picked a flight, picked a city. I took a bus to that city. It's like an 8-hour bus ride. And, I got here, woke up. I just enjoyed like the first couple of days. And then I found an apartment to rent. I think I told them I wanted to rent for 2 months and I ended up only staying a month.
And how hard is it to rent an apartment as someone who's only been in the country for like 2-3 days?
I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 9 out of 10. It's really easy. You could speak almost no Spanish. If you have a passport and some money, you're good to go, especially if you have cash. So it was really, through my research, I understood it was going to be possible for me to just catch a flight, rent an apartment the next day if I wanted to. And it was incredibly easy. A lot of people come here for that reason. It's like the soft launch for living abroad.
Yeah, that's crazy because I imagine most people who would love to try the expat life don't do it because they imagine it's going to be incredibly painful to make that transition.
It's going to be easier here, really, unless they just assign you an apartment at the airport. That's the only way it could be easier.
And you spent 1 month in the first town, then you moved to the second town where you currently are. And It was also super easy in that town to find an apartment. Yeah.
Yep. Like, here's some cash. Then I got the keys. And, a lot of apartments here are already furnished. Just couldn't be easier. If you were like a remote worker or, just want to take your laptop from one country to another country and get connected to the Wi-Fi and get a coffee, this country could not make it easier. So I was really happy to come here and so quickly get an apartment, like with a pool close to the beach and there's Wi-Fi already connected and I don't have to do anything. So it was, I just literally, I even had the luxury of moving from one town to another town that I preferred the atmosphere. So there's options.
Let everyone know which town you selected, especially anyone who's looking for, something similar to your situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I live in Jaco. A lot of people mispronounce as Yaco or Jacko. It's really, really, really bad. You'll hear it on the airplane flying into Costa Rica, like, yeah, I'm going to Yaco. Great. And it's pronounced Jaco. It's Jaco, and it's probably the easiest place to move in the world. I haven't been to enough places to say that, but it's the closest beach town to the airport, to the main airport. It's about an hour and a half away. You could take a bus, you could take a taxi, and it's probably got about 15,000 people. I'd say just depending on the season, there's a high and low season, like rainy season or summer. Right now, it is just starting to kick off summer and it's probably peak season because of people vacationing here.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I think you answered it already, but like what percentage of foreigners are from United States as opposed to other Western countries?
That was really surprising for me, actually. So I thought that all expats would be American. And it turns out that there are a lot of Canadians in the world. Let me just say that nicer.
Yeah, I'm sure they love to hear it phrased that way.
All right, that part we're not going to edit out.
So there's probably 30% of the expats here are Canadian, I would say. Maybe, like 60% from the United States. And I'd say another 10% from Mexico, Venezuela, some South American countries, said, and some even from Europe, from a lot of people from Spain here as well. But we have a pretty significant Israeli population. It seems to be a similar climate to like summer in Israel. and they like to vacation here. So I was surprised, really surprised. And the first time I realized there was more than one Canadian in the town, I was just shocked. I hadn't met more than like 4 Canadians in my life before I moved to Costa Rica. Now I have a lot of Canadian friends because the snowbird thing. I didn't even know that was a thing. Snow people, even remote workers, will come seasonally.
I guess the last question I had before maybe we get into how you actually make a living as an expat is the general. So we talked about the makeup of the expat community, but the overall community. What's the percentage of expats to locals who are living full time in the city, and how well do the two groups intermingle? Like, is this? I know in some cities or in some countries, the expat community is pretty segregated from the local community. So how is that in Costa Rica, or at least where you are?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I didn't realize that was going to be an issue at all whenever I moved here. I just understood it was going to be easy, that I understood Spanish, and I didn't consider how much I needed an integrated community to feel normal, to have a comparable experience to the United States. I moved to a city initially that was incredibly segregated, and I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't understand the local community. I didn't understand the culture at all. I wasn't going to learn when I was in a segregated neighborhood apart from the normal Costa Ricans. This is really only something that happens in coastal communities in Costa Rica. So if you live on the beach, you may run into a lot more expats, and you have to be, intentional where you move, because it can be just, very segregated. So I moved to Jaco from this other city because Jaco is incredibly integrated. So it's a mix throughout the city. There's not necessarily a wealthy part of the city or an expat part of the city. There are poor communities, undeveloped community. I don't know how to say that. Have like underserviced communities. There's different parts of town, but for the most part, the entire city is integrated. The building where I live is full of, expats, Costa Ricans, and it's probably the city that's doing it the best in Costa Rica, I'd say. There are other coastal communities, other beach towns, other tourist towns that are a lot more segregated, but Jaco does an incredible job. Even the schools here have a good mix of expat kids and normal, Costa Rican kids. Public school systems support that here. So
I know we were going to dive into how you make a living as an expat, but this does bring up one other question: is you're also a mom. So how are the schools? How do you feel about what's it like raising a child in Costa Rica?
I loved having the experience of raising a child here. I think it actually just integrated me more into the community. I have Costa Rican friends and Costa Rican mom friends, and my son plays with Costa Rican kids. He speaks Spanish fluently, and it's given me the opportunity to just become more a part of the community. He did attend what's called a guarderia, like a daycare for a while with other Costa Rican kids, and he loved it. I'm very happy that he'll have the opportunity to attend whatever kind of school is best for him. We have private schools, there's Montessori schools, there's public schools.
How expensive is daycare or other childcare options in your area?
It's substantially less expensive than the United States. What I've heard from my friends in the United States, because I didn't have a child in the United States, so I don't have that experience, but my friends, can pay more than I'm paying in rent in childcare, and I know that's pretty standard. So here, I think just to be candid, part-time to send my kid to daycare for 4 hours a day was $300 a month, 5 days a week if I wanted to. Not super cheap, but Costa Rica is the most expensive country in Central America. So
how much should this may be too broad of a question, but someone who's thinking about making the move to Costa Rica and planning a budget, what do you think would be a reasonable assumption for a monthly budget in terms of rent, just basic necessities, things like that?
There are a lot of variables there. It is a broad question. It depends on, I can tell you what I came here, what I needed when I got here, which was probably like $1,000 a month would have supported me if there were no emergencies and as long as I had my return ticket already planned. So if you need to, budget savings to be able to purchase things like flights, if you're planning to buy a car, all of that changes. But to be able to pay rent for a studio and buy food, when I got here, it was $1,000 a month was sufficient. Maybe $1,200 to be like really comfortable. I've probably doubled that now, but there's been some inflation obviously over the last 10 years. Rent's gone up, but it just depends on what you'd like to do. Some people want to stay in one place and don't need a car. Some people want to buy a car or buy a car and then sell it when they leave. I would say coming with savings is the smartest thing to do. And, being able to support yourself without work if necessary for at least a month. Generally just a good idea as a good practice in the United States as well, right?
Yeah. So I guess we should dive into earning a living and working as an expat. You already had freelance work lined up, so you could kind of just take it with you. But how difficult is it to start freelancing outside of the U.S.?
I think that's like the most interesting part of my journey here. Cause it's super cool to move to Costa Rica. It's beautiful here, but to be able to maintain my life, and not suffer and to improve my life, I'm happy that I did that. That I'm, I kind of had to take a hit and start from zero. I was in business school. And then I decided to do real estate, and I did that. But whenever I was going to transition to working online, I understood almost nothing I had done before in my life was going to help me. So I had to start from zero. And I've shared this with enough people. I know it works for other people as well. I never decided to write a book on it or anything like that. But I got into just copywriting. That was my in. For a lot of people, at least 10 years ago, that's a really easy way to get started working online. There's always people who need writing. I think, not sure, how much of a niche that is now, but I started working online through a website called Text Broker, just an online freelance platform. So you could take work, and I started learning how to do that. I got better and better. I improved my skill, but I had to start at zero, almost zero. I got paid just a little bit more than people who are not native English speakers. So that's where I started. And after that, I got some editing jobs right before I moved. So I decided to move to Costa Rica, and then I immediately just went, full force. I switched from doing real estate to writing so that I was ready to go when I got to Costa Rica. I was already making money as a freelancer before I got here, because it's probably like the top key to success, being able to support yourself if you want to move abroad, So I just wanted to establish that. Everything was connected to my bank account. I knew I was going to be able to get money out if I got here. But I started working just as a writer because I had been to college. I thought that, I've taken some college level English courses. I can write a paper. And I could, but I had to improve my skills. And eventually I got into other freelance websites using that experience. And I've just built on that over the last 10 years.
Are there any local employment opportunities as well for expats?
Absolutely. You can work legally. You get a work visa. There are a lot of companies here. There's also other seasonal employment opportunities for people who want to just come and, work at a hostel for 3 months, for example. That's pretty popular for people who don't want to live here long term. But to work locally, you have to change your mindset of how much money you're going to make. The cost of living is less, and basically the minimum wage is less. So overall, I knew it was going to maintain a lifestyle for me if I kept working through the United States. I have briefly worked, for various Costa Ricans, small projects, but for the most part, I don't have a lot of experience with working in Costa Rica. And I didn't come here with the intention of taking anybody's job. So
Yeah.
I thought it would be most polite if I was going to be an expat.
For you mentioned work visa. I wanted to ask, like, is it easy? Is it an easy process to get it?
You just have to have a skill that a Costa Rican most likely wouldn't have. So it just depends. If you have, something valuable to bring to a company, or if you have a special skill or talent or a degree, you could get a work visa easily. There's a lot of major companies here, Amazon, Intel. One of Costa Rica's largest exports is actually like, what do they call it? Like chips. They make software chips.
Mhm.
But yeah, you can absolutely get a work visa. Most people actually choose to get tourist visas when they come to visit, or they actually have a digital nomad visa now. I think it's a 9-month visa,
Oh,
maybe a year-long visa. Mm-hmm.
but well, since freelancing was your path, I think it'd be interesting to learn a little more about how you really built that into a career. I did so just like some of the logistics behind it. When you were first setting things up in the States, do you still have a US bank account, or did you decide to set up a Costa Rican bank account, or, financial logistics? Was there anything complicated there?
No, just fear. It was just fear. There was no, again, the internet had a lot of information on, just various platforms, Reddit, other expat communities, other expats online have shared enough information. I felt like I was going to be able to access whatever money I made in the United States. We even have Western Union, and basically once you have established a support system of friends here, you know that if you can't get money, you could probably get money to a friend. So as long as you have people you trust. But when you're brand new, it's important to call your bank, let them know you're leaving,
Mm-hmm.
just go
Yeah.
see how it goes, to kind of go back. I started working for a text broker and Upwork. I think it was called something else at the time, but that was a long time ago, like 10 years ago, and connected my PayPal into my bank account. I maintained that United States bank account. I still have it. And I knew I'd be able to get money out here. Of course, we have pretty high ATM fees. It's like
Right.
$8 to get money out. But, like per transaction, just depends on what kind of bank you have. There are a lot of international banks as well that don't have foreign transaction fees. So it's just something to consider. When you consider your budget, you consider how much money you're going to need each month, how much money you're going to need to take out. But for example, even my last landlord let me pay my rent every month via PayPal. So
Okay.
there's a good catering to the expats as well here. We're a little bit spoiled. The harder things are medical care, car maintenance, stuff that I probably wouldn't have been great at in the United States. But just add the layer of Spanish onto it, words that I didn't know. But really, it's, to be able to use a card at a grocery store is simple. Some places obviously only accept cash, but they actually accept United States dollars as well as the local currency, which is called a colone. So pretty much, you could just bring a bag of money down here and live pretty easily. If you got your laptop and some cash, you're going to be fine.
You mentioned medical care. So how does the health insurance work? Do you have to buy it locally, like a local plan?
They have socialized healthcare, what is it called? Nationalized healthcare in Costa Rica. So if you decide to become a resident, if you're staying long term, you can pay into the national system. It's significantly cheaper than the United States. They do have, the same kind of what I've heard of the system in Canada. There can be longer wait times. You have to attend certain appointments yearly. But yeah, the medical care here is two different worlds. There's public and private. So the national system, Costa Ricans use, but there's a whole nother system of private medical care that you can choose to use if you'd like to. And I did have my son here in Costa Rica. He was born at a private hospital here, the largest one. It's considered the nice one. And to be honest, it was a standard American hospital. So that's pretty much the experience I had. But I have, I don't know how much to get into that. I had an amazing medical team who, was able to meet my medical needs above and beyond standard, pregnancy. If you have complications, they have doctors here for that. So they have really got it all as far as the medical world. And most people I've met don't have to leave Costa Rica to receive any kind of special treatment. They have any kind of special problems. If you break an arm or if you have cancer, they can probably treat it here. So I do have insurance outside of, what's available in Costa Rica for locals. It's not just apply to expats unless you're pregnant. If you're a pregnant woman in Costa Rica, you can receive free medical care because your baby is going to be born in Costa Rica. But I have health insurance I pay into. It's more of an emergency policy than something I would actively use, but it's available for expats and it's pretty affordable. Like $2,000 a year for some emergency coverage is something I feel comfortable with.
And then since you're not paying into the national care, you just pay out of pocket for private? Here.
That's right. But again, it's about 3/4 of the price of what you'd pay in the United States. So everything feels like a win when it's not as expensive as the United States.
Okay. And in terms of doing freelance work, so how long did it take you working as a freelancer in the US before you felt comfortable that you had enough income coming in that you could make the move and start a new life?
It was rough at first, probably the first 2 months. Again, I took jobs consistently for a very low rate, but I quickly learned what kind of output I was capable of. And once I understood those parameters, like I can make this much every day, I can handle this much screen time in front of a computer, keeping those things in mind, I figured out how much I'd be able. It took me, I think, about 6 months to really get a grip on it. I made the decision to leave. And then once I was here, I just had to keep working. I basically set myself up for that. Like, okay, I'm going to keep working even when I'm there. And if I can't, I had a flight that was booked for a 3-month tourist visa here, basically. So I decided to come, give it a shot for 3 months. And if I could make it work, and I loved it so much, I was just committed to making it work. So
I was curious to know, are there any restrictions from the government that you cannot stay after a certain time?
So you can get a 6-month tourist visa right now. They recently changed that. And you could renew that as many times as you'd like to. You do run the risk of maybe annoying the immigration officers. They just take note. Eventually, I just filled a complete passport. So they noticed that I had been in and out of the country a few times. To be fair, I visited other countries as well, but you can come to Costa Rica for 6 months now, the tourist visa. And after that, you have to leave the country for a day, come back. But they will just give any United States citizen a 6-month tourist visa now. You can come for less time, of course. If you'd like to stay permanently, you can apply for residency. They have temporary residency first, and then permanent residency is awarded to you after that. And the process typically takes place through either investing in property in Costa Rica or into a business in Costa Rica. So you have to commit some kind of financial amount, or you can have a baby. So my son is a Costa Rican citizen. He's my anchor baby. I didn't plan on using him to achieve residency, but it will be part of my process here. I do still like to travel, so I don't necessarily need more than a 6-month tourist visa, but it's more prudent for me to start paying into the local healthcare system and just be even more legal.
And if you did, so if you aren't a parent or you don't have your child in Costa Rica and you did want to become a resident, do you know how much you need to invest in order to?
I think it's $50,000, but I did not go that route. So I think it's about 50. For most people, they buy a house. Like they just, they buy a house, and once that process is, they can show it to the immigration system, then that's how they get in. So you can also, I think, just put it into a bank account and show it to them and like leave it there. And as soon as you do that, you have to start paying into the medical system immediately. They base your payments into the medical system off of your income. So once you show the Costa Rican government you've got $50,000, you actually have to start paying quite a bit each month for the medical system.
How do taxes work when you're on a tourist visa? And then you may not know this, but once you become a resident, how do taxes work? And then how much, when you start paying into the national healthcare system, does that come out to a month?
Most people I know pay somewhere around $100 a month, I believe, into the healthcare system, which is, regardless, you have to pay income tax in the United States, whatever income, even if you're living in another country, even if you're a resident in another country. Don't know if you know this, but the United States does not stop income tax.
Right.
They really don't care. And even if you decide to renounce your citizenship, you still have to pay income tax for, I think, 7 years after, 5 years after.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
So there's no escaping the taxes in the United States. And you can, if you stay out of the United States enough, I know this through experience, you can do the foreign earned income credit, I believe. You have to pay substantially less, just depending on what tax bracket you would fall into usually. If you only spend, I think, 20 days in the United States in a calendar year, it puts you into a different kind of tax situation where you have to pay, I think it's like 20% overall.
And Costa Rican taxes, you don't pay them when you're on a tourist visa, or do you?
No, you don't have to. And if you were working for Costa Rican government, it would be the government or a Costa Rican company would be different. But I think that they just take it out of your salary. It's deducted. But if you're a freelancer, then it's not.
But then once you become a resident as a freelancer, would you have to pay taxes in Costa Rica as well?
No, I still, because I work for United States companies typically. So it's not like paying taxes places.
I know we're running out of time, so I just wanted to get this last question in. So what would be your top 5 tips for
that's a good one.
People in the United States considering a move to Costa Rica, either like a short-term visit or living there for a much longer term?
I'd say be open-minded. Because when you come here, you may have things brought to your attention, places to go, things to do. I had to be willing to move to a new city. I thought I had picked the right city, but so the top tip is just to be open-minded, to change if you need to. You know, if you're not happy, you need to be able to talk to people and, make a move if you have to. Try new experiences. I didn't eat avocados until I moved here. And, that's a silly but I had to be open-minded too. Just because I had an idea that I wanted to live abroad or that it sounded cool didn't mean it was going to really fit perfectly when I landed. So I don't know. Another tip: find a friend who only speaks Spanish and hang out with them, because immersion. I'd say this. Let me say this in a funnier way: get a boyfriend who speaks Spanish. You will learn Spanish. Or find a friend. Go to a store that the owners only speak Spanish. Yeah, and another tip: if you find that, I don't know how to say it, you need to know yourself before you come here. Like, what makes you comfortable? Do you want to be near the water? Do you need to have a pool? Do you need to have AC? Those things are variables here. So you could live in the jungle in a house without AC, or you can live at the beach, and that will give you the most important information about your budget. So what kind of lifestyle you want to maintain while you're here, the more you know about yourself, the better off you're going to be when you get here. if I was going to like speak to any young women who are considering moving abroad, don't be afraid to buy a phone chip. It's not hard. It's like $5.
Yeah,
that's great. I think it's you have an inspirational story, and
for sure.
Hopefully, hopefully you'll help someone make the jump who's been dreaming of doing it.
Or on the fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't gatekeep anything. I guess I should have said that. Like, I'm not afraid of sharing like the insider information of what websites I use, what works for me, like what you can't do, that you used to be able to do. Like, but I've had a pretty successful legal run. I have not had any problems like living and working abroad, and having a child, having family visit and validate that experience that I do live here and I'm staying. Yeah, I'm happy with it. And if anyone ever like wants to do that, Costa Rica is a really great place to start. There's a couple other Central American countries that are close, but this is the prettiest one.
Fair enough.
Great.
All right. Wow. Thanks, Joan. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, this was great. This is wonderful. So I think, like I said, I think it'll be really helpful for some of those people who are dreaming of paradise.